So in the future, we think there's going to be a situation where individual parts manufacturers or people who develop engines will develop their models and then them to the automobile maker. And so all these parts will be brought together into the integrated model or the digital twin. But the question is, who really owns these models? Will the component manufacturer want to just turn over their valuable IP of a model to the car manufacturer? Those are really open questions, and there are some approaches that are being thought about. One of those approaches, for example, is the use of blockchains. And in this kind of scenario, rather than turning over your model, you would still retain your model, but every time that car needed to access your model, it would be kind of a microtransaction. And in that microtransaction, you would be basically paying for information that comes from that model rather than the component manufacturer actually turning that model over to the car manufacturer. So in today's world, the business portfolio of an industry consists of the different product technologies, let's say, that they produce, they manufacture, they sell to others. But in the future, there's going to be an inversion where that portfolio will consist of the models themselves rather than the products. In the world of digital twins, what's valuable will be those digital twin models rather than the hardware products themselves. And so the portfolio will reflect that, where business portfolios consist of models rather than business portfolios consisting of individual products. So one of the research projects I have going on in my research group is called Interactive Model-Centric Systems Engineering. There's a lot of effort that's been putting into looking at how we do engineering that's model-based. And much of this work has to do with things like modeling language or tool sets that one can use or appropriate practices for how to construct a model and maintain a model. However, there's really been very little that's looked at in terms of how humans interact with these models and what are some of the implications. And as we move to this world of digital twins, where models are going to be the prominent thing, it accentuates this need to understand the relationship between the humans and the models. Under this project, one of the things that I've had going on is an empirical research study, an interview-based study with experts in the field of models. And in this study, we've been looking at what are the factors that are involved in model-based decision-making. And not surprisingly, trust turns out to be a critical issue here. You could have the best models in the world that operate in a superb way, but if people don't actually trust these models, the information is not going to get used. In the research we've been doing, we've certainly found that there's this preference, at least in modern day, for human knowledge over, say, encoded human knowledge as models represent. Some of the engineers working on the project want total transparency in a model. They want to go see into the code, so to speak. A senior decision maker certainly wants their models to be transparent to those who need to find all the information that's in the model. However, they themselves don't need it. So the question is, how do we create these type of modeling environments so the individuals who need to go deep down into detail can get what they need, and at the same time you could sit, say, a senior decision maker in front of a screen and they could actually interact with the model to get meaningful information without them having to know how to operate modeling language, without having to operate modeling tool sets. So we found an interesting behavior when we did this study, and that was that there seems to be a pattern that involves three individuals in making model-based decisions. There are the modelers themselves, there is the ultimate decision maker, and then in between those two is what we call the through person. So senior decision makers have high-level technical people that they trust. And it's really those individuals then that are talking with the modelers and getting the information they need and passing this through. So the question comes about with what happens when we start collapsing that, and you can sit down and interact with a model-based environment. We've kind of eliminated that through person who can sometimes act as the check and balance person that can point out things like biases. Oh, well, you're really anchored in your opinion on this. So we're really studying what can we do to create a more effective human-model interaction.